I would like to welcome everyone first of all, and thank you so much for joining us here today for this lunch and learn and letting us provide you with a little bit of background about the organization, projects, what we have in the pipeline, what's coming up. As you can see on this first slide, it's also our 15th anniversary. So that's a big milestone and a lot to be proud of. And as you'll hear in the presentation, there is indeed a lot going on these days, whether it's new projects, geographic expansion into other territories and much more. So I'm super excited for today's presentation. Um, if you want to move to the next slide, maybe before we dive into the details, I'm just going to cover a couple of housekeeping items here. So we're scheduled to go 60 minutes here. We definitely have a little bit of flexibility in the schedule. I guess one ask when you're not speaking, if you can please put yourself on mute, that will help the presenters and the speakers during the presentation. Also, at the end, we will have definitely time for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, feel free to either put it in the chat or ask at the end when we have time set aside for the Q&A session. And if we don't get to all of the questions, or if you are not comfortable sharing your question with the group, please feel free to reach out to us, email us, send us a LinkedIn message, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Next slide, please. So today's agenda, it's a very flexible agenda here, but a couple of topics that we really wanted to hone in on is one, covering the background of the organization and what we're doing and what the organization stands for and what the mission is. And we also wanted to highlight a couple of our newer projects that are coming up, particularly the Soitsambu Secondary School, as well as the Nane Nane Secondary School. And for us to be able to do that, we'll have some great presenters who will help us answer questions in a moderated format. And at the end, of course, we'll open it up, like I said, for questions from the audience. Next slide, please. Here are today's great presenters. Maybe Janice, would you like to start and say a few words about yourself?
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm Janice Lathan, the founder. Some of you on this have known me for a long time and are very aware of the organization, and some of you are new to it, and we'll be explaining more about it. But I started it 15 years ago, and I'm excited that you're all here today to learn more about it.
Thank you, Janice. Mr. Mushingi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, Sabasaba Mushingi is my name. I am a banker by profession, and I'm a CEO of one of the local banks in Tanzania. And I'm someone who is also passionate about supporting the communities. I am also somebody who came from the background of areas where Powering Potential, PEF, and the journeys and the team is supporting. And I'm also one of those who first knew how to use the computer when I secured my first job. Therefore, when I met Janice in, I don't know whether it was Washington, D.C. or it was in Virginia in 2011, she was able to tell me, at least in a quick moment, what kind of activities she's doing in Tanzania. Then I got interested, and since then I've been part of Powering Potential until when it was made a local NGO here, where I'm one of the board members, and I'm also responsible for finance and the treasury management.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mushingi. Mr. Matthias, would you like to go next?
Hi everybody, I'm Alvin Matthias. I started working with Powering Potential while I was a teacher in Manjika Secondary School, where I met Janice when she first came to Tanzania. And she was in Safari, and she was very inspired by the student when she showed her laptops to those students at Manjika Secondary School. So by then we started working together until 2016, where we have established our sister organization here in Tanzania, PEF, and I'm the executive director, and we're still moving forward doing this project. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthias. Um, and my name is Laszlo Schneider, and I am a board member for Powering Potential. I am relatively new to the team. I joined in March of this year, so I'm very excited to be here and join the cause and work with all of you going forward. And as far as my profession, I am a director in accounting. I work for KPMG, a large public accounting firm. So that is my day job. Um, so Alessandra, if you want to move to the next slide, please. We have a little video that we wanted to kick off the presentation and share with you, basically showing a little bit of a background of what Powering Potential does.
Powering Potential is on a mission to enhance education in Africa and South America by using solar power, low-watt computers, free software, and a digital library that includes Khan Academy videos, Wikipedia articles, and so much more. This digital library is available to students even without the internet.
And many students, including I, we have benefited with this. I'm happy seeing Powering Potential is now growing, reaching number of students in different parts of Tanzania. As a beneficiary of this program, I knew how it affected or it impacted my life. And I'm happy now they reach other students, and I believe it will have a great impact in their lives.
We currently have a program in 29 schools in Tanzania, and in 2019, we launched our award-winning program in the Peruvian Amazon, led by a Fulbrighter. Please come join us to help young people who are so eager to learn and develop themselves in their communities. Together, we can build a brighter future.
Thank you. This is just a little snippet from one of the videos, but if you would like to check out our YouTube channel, we have various other videos there that I think are really great and are very informative. So just wanted to include our social media for you guys here on this slide so that you can find us, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram or YouTube. Like I said, on YouTube, there's several other videos. And we also would like to encourage those who are interested to sign up for our newsletter. We have a regular cadence of sending out news about our organization and what the latest projects are. So if you're interested, Janice just put in the chat the link how to sign up for the newsletter, and we will also include it at the end of the presentation too. In case you missed it now, then you'll have the opportunity to sign up later. Next slide, please. So here we have another little video that focuses on some of our newest projects and includes some of the footage from the newer schools. So Alessandra, if you want to hit play, please. Thank you very much. I love that picture from the front of the Sword Sambu Secondary School. It's an incredible good picture. So in this next part of the presentation, I would like to invite Mr. Mushingi and Mr. Matthias to answer a few questions that I have and I would like to moderate. And my first question is actually going out to Mr. Mushingi. You mentioned a little bit of your early involvement with the organization and Janice, but could you please elaborate a little bit further for us and for our audience on what intrigued you in the beginning and why did you decide on joining the organization?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute and I don't have Albin closer to me to help me. But anyway, yes, I think during my presentation, during my early introduction, I mentioned briefly how I got involved into powering potential activities. And the background is I had just been appointed as the CEO of one of the local banks in Tanzania. And I had just came back to Tanzania from abroad where I was in the Middle East for a couple of years there. Then I was a board member of one of the global institutions which is based in Brussels, and they had board meeting in Washington, D.C. So I traveled to Washington, D.C. for the board meeting. And after the board meeting, I was informed there was a meeting which was for Tanzanians who are living outside Tanzania and specifically in America and Canada. So I attended that meeting, and the president of Tanzania at that time, Dr. Kikwete, was the guest of honor. Luckily on that day, Janice was also there, and I was able to link up with her. And she told me briefly what she's doing in Tanzania. And because I'm one of those who are also passionate about supporting the communities, I got hooked up. And since then, we have been in constant interaction with the Janice. And when the foundation decided to form a local foundation here, I became the board member. And I think I'm one of those who are heavily involved in the activities than any other board member. And I'm happy to be part of this. Janice is doing a great job, and for supporters, please continue supporting what Janice is, whatever effort that can be put forward into supporting their activities is something that needs to be commended.
What an incredible story. Thank you so much, Mr. Mushingi. How about you, Mr. Matthias? Do you mind elaborating on your early involvement with the organization and what made you choose this path?
Yes, sure. Thank you. As I've mentioned earlier, after completion of my high school, as you know, we have a big problem challenging science and mathematics teachers. So I was employed at Banjika Secondary School, and that school is the first school that Janice has visited when she was in Safari. And there was where Powering Potential has pioneered its education through technology program. So while I was in school, I never had a chance to touch computer. I was very eager. Even when I completed my Form 4 and Form 6 examination, when we go for getting the result, we have to pay somebody at the internet cafe, and they just gave us the result. We can't touch the keyboard. We can't open anything. So I was very eager by the time to learn computer, but I never had a chance. But while I was in Banjika as physics and chemistry teacher, I met Janice, and she has donated 2 laptops at the school. And those laptops were kept at a separate room, and just for teachers and students to get access. And I had access to the computer. I learned by myself, and the teacher started coming to me and learning from me, and I became expert. But then we started working together with Janice, and then we pioneered the first computer lab at Banjika Secondary School. So I was involved since then in 2009. And we continued to work together with Powering Potential and Janice Lathan until 2016, where we found it is important to establish a sister organization here in Tanzania, and then the executive director and also the board member for the PEF. And we are working together with the Powering Potential. And I forgot to tell, when we were at Banjika, we established a project called Technology Tent Program, when we started doing small group learning, technology learning programs. We called Technology Tent, and then we moved forward with educating through technology program. We started new schools. Until now we have 6 schools here in Karatu, and we move forward to more schools in other districts, Serengeti, Ngorongoro, and Bunda. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthias. And I think that's a really good segue to the next question that I had. And I have that question for Mr. Mushingi. I understand, Mr. Mushingi, that you also have about a decade-long history with the organization. How do you view the most significant changes, or how the organization evolved over these years?
Yeah, sure. I think I hinted briefly during my early introduction. I come from Serengeti, so it's areas bordering Karatu or Ngorongoro area where Janice came to Tanzania and saw the need to support these communities. So for those that have visited Tanzania and gone for safari, you may have passed closer to my village. So that is where I was born, and that is where I grew up. So I studied there and then went to secondary schools, obviously outside Serengeti. But in all my years, I never had an opportunity to touch a computer. And of course, it was a bit long, a long time ago. It was in the late 80s and the early 90s. And at that time, obviously, the world had started to become computerized. But in our case, students never had that opportunity to be able to use a computer. So the first time I was hired as a bank official, as a bank clerk, I was now faced with a computer as one of the working tools, and I didn't know even how to put it on. So I remember one of the guys who came and conducted the basic training on how to switch it on, and how to be able to access some files here and there. And at that time, I don't remember the actual programs that were being used. But surely, the students coming from this type of communities are actually deprived the access to computers, access to internet, and access to information. And therefore, any effort done to make these students in seriously marginalized communities to have access to computer, access to internet, and access to information is something which requires some serious commendation. So for me, because of that, I fell in love with the foundation, and I have continued to be in love with the foundation. I have visited even some of the projects, and yes, there is every reason to continue to be engaged with what PF is doing and what Janice is doing and the team.
That is very interesting, Mr. Mushingi. And I actually have a follow-up question to you. So you explained what some of the initial challenges were that you faced and made the organization so intriguing for you. How would you contrast with challenges today? Do you think those still challenges are the most prevalent ones, or are there any new ones maybe that we also need to face?
Surely the world has a bit evolved and changed. So those challenges that we had are still there actually in Tanzania, although the situations have a bit changed. What are the changes? During our time, that was the time when the world was starting to have computers all over. We had some huge mainframes in server rooms, other than these small servers that are currently available. During our time, you really needed to go to a specific computer location. We used to have some computer, unlike today where computer is almost in everyone's home. However, despite the fact that there is almost a computer in everyone's home, in rural communities like Karatu or Serengeti or Ngorongoro or Bunda or any other parts of Tanzania, you will never find a computer in anyone's home in the village. And therefore, the only opportunity for students to be able to access computers and the information and internet is if these facilities could be offered in schools. Now, these schools, the secondary schools like the Banjika, the Welwel, the Rigicha, they are actually schools which have been established not long, and they are in rural communities, and the funding of the education in Tanzania is still very low. So computers are considered as probably luxury, because we even have challenges of having sufficient teachers and other sufficient working tools like chairs and tables. And therefore, computers are actually a luxury. And on top of that, most of the villages in Tanzania are still not having sufficient electricity from the national power grid. And therefore, if you want to install a computer in a school, you must have a solution for power. And that is what Powering Potential and the PEF are able to provide. There is a lot of progress in terms of electrifying as many villages as possible. But these schools, they cannot actually sometimes afford to provide the wiring in their school. And also, they are also sometimes unable to pay for the electricity if the school has been connected to the power grid. And therefore, any effort that this Powering Potential is doing is really adding value. I've visited these schools myself. I expected to see the photo of me, and you said, what, well, school. Really, you could see excitement from the students because of this opportunity that has been done by Powering Potential.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mashingi. And that's actually again a really good segue to the next question I had. I was really intrigued by some of the pictures that I originally saw about Powering Potential and the enthusiasm of the students. So my next question is actually for Mr. Matthias. I know that you work very closely with the students, as you had also mentioned, and I would be very curious to hear your perspective on in what terms do you think it's the most beneficial? How are Powering Potential making the best impact on the students' lives, or how does the organization impact the students' lives in the most meaningful way?
Thank you very much. As Mr. Mushingi has elaborated more you see, there's still more challenges, especially even though the computer is now almost available everywhere, but there's still more challenge in rural community, and the electricity is really not reliable. Also, the fact that we put computer labs, we give students and teachers access to technology. We also put digital education resources that can supplement this problem of teachers, especially in science and mathematics. We know technology cannot replace the teacher, but the content helps students even if they don't have teachers for mathematics and science. The videos and the mathematics content that they learn from our computer lab will help them to improve their education.
Yeah, that's super helpful background. Thank you so much. And Mr. Matthias, I also have another question from you. So we talked about, from a student's perspective. My other question to you is also from a macro perspective. I understand that Powering Potential has a really good relationship with the government in Tanzania. Can you please elaborate on that relationship and how that evolved? Why is that so important for our organization?
Yeah, that is true. We have a very good relationship with the government, and we are working, the schools we are working in are all the government-owned schools, secondary schools. Before moving to every school, we meet local government, and we meet with district education officers and select the schools. We also work together to make sure that the project is sustained at every school. And they make sure they assign teacher who will be responsible for the lab.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you. And of course, most of us know that there's two new projects coming up, Soitsambu and Nane Nane. So, Mr. Matthias, would you like to share a few thoughts about these schools? Maybe just put a little bit of context for our audience, the size, the age of the children, anything that you feel like would be important for our audience to know about these new projects.
Oh, thank you. So I'll start with Soitsambu Secondary School. This school is in Ngorongoro district, and they are beneficiary of our first computer lab in 2014. So there are almost 720 students, and it's boarding schools, girls and boys. And they have about 13 classes and 26 teachers. So in 2014, we established, Powering Potential has established first computer lab at Soitsambu Secondary School. And they have been really taking care of that. And the number of students have been growing from time to time. And until now, they have over 700 students. And they only have one computer lab with 5 computers. And many students really want to join the classes to get the access to the content and the access to the ICT, but the chance is very limited because of the number of computers.
700 students for one computer. Did I hear that correctly? And we're trying to expand that one computer to more like a 20 computer lab. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah, incredible. What about Nane Nane? Do you mind sharing some thoughts on that school project as well?
Yeah, we are also working to get Nane Nane Secondary School with computer lab. There are over 800 students there, and it's day schools, government-owned schools, day school with boys and girls. Currently, they don't have computer lab. They have computer for administration purpose, and they have been in touch with us since 3 years back, looking for possibilities, which possibility to get access to the computer labs, and the reason we are working to get Nane Nane Secondary School as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Well, those are really the questions that I prepared with. So maybe I would just open it up for both of you, Mr. Mushingi and Mr. Matthias. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience? Maybe a favorite story or any other information that you feel like would be helpful for our audience to understand Powering Potential?
Sure, I can start. I come from a village which Rigicha Secondary School, one of the schools that was recently supported by Powering Potential to have the computers installed, the solar system installed in their school. So before Powering Potential came on board, literally there was nothing as far as information technology, computers, internet is concerned to that school, as well as the neighboring schools. So I visited the school after Matthias and his team had passed there. We had also donated some 4 computers there because obviously PEF had requested our support. Unfortunately, our policies internally of the organization that I manage does not, that has some restriction on supporting the NGOs, unfortunately. So we're able now to proceed on our own, but obviously the request had come from the Powering Potential. If, you know, I visited the school and you could see the happiness from the teachers, from the students themselves, the community themselves. So you are really transforming these communities in a very, very positive way. So I'm glad to be part of this journey. I think where I'm going, if I cannot change the policies, I will have to start contributing from my own pockets so that, you know, we could see another student, 1 or 2, 3 or 4 or 5, being able to have access to information technology through what Powering Potential is doing. So I'm glad to be part of this process.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mashingi. And Mr. Matthias, any other closing remarks and closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, I would like to thank everyone, especially Powering Potential, for the effort. You know, it's huge changes since Powering Potential started project here in Tanzania. You know, they have impacted a lot of students who are now doing better in terms of education, because before Powering Potential has started this project, we have never experienced such easy access to computer, to ICT, and access to digital education resources. So I think this is the big impact that Powering Potential has done.
Thank you, Mr. Matthias.
Maybe before you wind up, let me say one comment about Matthias and her team. I visited their offices in Karatu, a small town and a very small office. But the level of activities that this small team in a tiny small office and tough environment, if you compare to what they were doing, really they deserve a pat on their, you know, they are really our stars. So Albin, Matthias and your team, keep up doing the good work. And I wish there was any possibility to improve where you guys are working from. And also if there is any possibility to improve how you are also being supported to provide the necessary support. But you know, you are doing a good job. He's a very serious person, Matthias himself. He knows his staff, is able to do as many activities as concerned. Is now the accountant of the company, is also the engineer of the installation process, is the director responsible for everything. Of course, we are helping him, but actually everything starts from him. And being an engineer, you know, we have come a long way. Writing minutes during the board meeting, the first minutes were crazy, but as we went along, you know, he got some significant improvement. So, Matthias, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to both of you. And for our audience, you will definitely have the opportunity at the end of the presentation to ask any questions. But for now, I will hand it over to Janice, who is going to take us through a short presentation about the organization.
Okay, well, that was a great, it was great hearing from both of you, Mr. Moshingi and Albin. Excuse me. So as I mentioned before, I started Powering Potential in 2006. So we're celebrating our 15-year anniversary this year. And so I'm going to take you through this slide presentation. And these are the 6 different sections we'll go through. Next slide. Next slide. So I went to Tanzania on a safari in 2006, and I had studied Swahili in preparation for the safari. And when I went to the school, Banjika, I introduced myself in Swahili, and the kids just burst into excited applause. And I was so overwhelmed by their sense of appreciation that I decided I wanted to come back to the school and do something for them. At the time, I had a computer consulting business. So I decided I'm going to go home, I'm going to raise money, I'm going to buy 10 computers, and I'm going to come back and spend a month teaching them. And then I learned the school had no electricity. So that's how it began. I went back a year later and brought a laptop, 2 laptops actually. And you can see how excited the kids were to see a laptop. They had never seen a computer before. Next slide. So after that, after bringing those first 2 computers, then I raised money to install a solar energy system so that we could bring more computers. And our mission now is to use technology to enhance education and stimulate imaginations for learners in developing countries while respecting and incorporating values of the local culture. That's very important to us. Next slide. And excuse me, I guess something. And our vision is all learners in developing countries experiencing the joys of technology and fulfilling their potential as global citizens. Next slide. So we've won awards for our program, the most prestigious. In 2017, we won an Energy Globe National Award for Best Project in Tanzania. That was Powering Potential. And then in 2019, PEF was one of 3 finalists for an Energy Globe World Award in the youth category. And they all received an all expenses paid trip to Finland to present to a world audience the project. And then we were also shortlisted by the Reimagine Education organization for an e-learning award. Next slide. So we have 3 primary goals with our organization: to provide the technology infrastructure, which is the solar, the computers, and then to provide access to digital educational resources. And these are offline, so they don't need the internet to access them. It includes Wikipedia articles, Khan Academy videos, ebooks from Project Gutenberg, medical reference books, UNESCO teacher resources, just a wealth of information. And they all have this at their fingertips. And then we also provide training. Next slide. So as you've heard, we started in Tanzania in 2006. Next slide. So we're actually in 4 different regions in Tanzania, but we're focused on these 2 regions, Arusha and the Mara region. And then we also have a program at 16 schools in Zanzibar. And then in 2019, we launched our program in Peru, led by a Fulbrighter, Dana Renzi. And they actually put 25 computers in a school there. Next slide. And on the left, you have a picture of the team in Tanzania. Rich Siegel, Dana Renzi, and Ina Haynes were the 3 who managed that effort in Peru. And then that's a picture of the Belém district of Iquitos, where the school is. So let's talk now a little bit about the technology. So we use the Raspberry Pi computer, and I don't know if you can see my computer here, but It's, it's about 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And it only takes 5 watts of electricity, which is important because when you install a solar energy system, you know, it's very expensive. So since the computer only takes 5 watts, it's a practical solution. And we also found monitors that only take 10 watts. So the whole computer only takes 15 watts, where a normal computer can take, you know, 80 or 90 watts. Next slide. And that's the computer with the case on it. And then solar, as I said, we install a solar energy system. And we have 2 programs, the Spark and the Spark Plus. Spark is 5 user computers and Spark Plus is an additional 15 computers for a total of 20. Next slide. So this is the difference between the 2 computers and I mean between the 2 programs, and both programs have all of that offline educational content that I talked about earlier. And once we install a Spark Plus lab at a school, then that school can offer the Tanzanian curriculum of information and computer sciences. And we've had over 3,000 students register or enroll in those courses in Tanzania. Next slide. Now, in addition to the Spark and the Spark Plus, we also have a program that we call the Pioneer. And it's that Raspberry Pi computer loaded up with all that offline content. And we pair it with a handheld projector. And then we give them a projection screen, as you can see in the photo, and then a solar recharging unit. And that unit, the teachers can take around to their various classrooms and project all of this educational content to the students. So that's a nice way to get a school started with technology. It's much less expensive than putting in a computer lab. Next slide. So the impact. So we have implemented over 97 programs so far, including about 40 training workshops. 34,000 students have had a world of knowledge at their fingertips. We conducted a survey of students who have gone through schools that had our program, and 60% of those respondents reported that they were continuing their education, and 58% reported that they were secured employment because of their technology skills. And as I said before, over 3,000 students have enrolled in the Tanzania National ICT curriculum for secondary schools. And in addition to the offline educational content that I talked about, Khan Academy videos and Wikipedia articles, we also installed the Tanzanian digitized secondary school curriculum, which is created by a company in Tanzania called Shuli Direct. Next slide. So as Mr. Moshingi mentioned, I had met President Kikwete in the US many years ago, and I've since met him a couple times and even had lunch with him with a group of people at the State House in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And the day before that he left his office, he was president of Tanzania from 2005 to 2015. He wrote me a letter saying I was really very impressed with the good work that you exhibited in Dodoma. Dodoma is the capital of Tanzania. We had been invited there to participate in Education Week and present our work. And I therefore encourage you to continue with your efforts to enable people in rural areas to enjoy the benefits of information and communication technology. And then in this picture, you see Jeremy Schwartz. He is the executive director of World Possible. World Possible is the organization that compiles all of that offline content that we use. It's called Rachel. And he visited our school and he commented, I trust what Janice and the Powering Potential team are doing. They're doing it the right way with local support, community engagement, and blending learning. Next slide. So I get great feedback from students and teachers, and this is one of my favorite quotes that we received from a student at the Cesira Secondary School. If one day we meet in person, I would be much overjoyed and might shed tears because of your heart of helping, since you have brought us from a dark environment and now we are going to be like shining stars. I thank you a lot. And actually, I'll just tell you one quick story too. This is one of my favorite stories. After we had installed the computer lab at Benjica, our pilot school, I was walking across the schoolyard and a boy came out of the computer lab. And when he saw me, he ran up to me and he said, Madam, I just learned that a man walked on the moon. That blew my mind. Just imagine the impact that has and that all of us are having together on those students. Next slide. So this is one of my favorite expressions, and this is kind of a motto of Powering Potential. This is Swahili, kama unataka kwenda haraka, nenda mwenye, kama unataka kwenda mbali, nenda pamoja. And in English, that means, next slide, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And the reason that we have been able to go for 15 years is because so many people are going together with us. Next slide. So these are some of our partners in Tanzania. Tanzania Postal Bank, as we mentioned, has given us a grant and also donated computers. Serena Hotels, and then the Karatu District Council and the Bunda District Council have both contributed funds, and also the Tanzania Rural Energy Agency gave us money to install solar energy systems. Next slide. And these are some of our partners and sponsors in the US. The Siegel Family Foundation is our major donor. They've been supporting us since 2009. The Raspberry Pi Foundation, Newman's Own Foundation. Next slide. Okay, so Laszlo, I'll hand it back to you for the questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Janice, for the amazing presentation and sharing some of these personal stories with us. And with that, we only have a few minutes here left, and I know that we have a couple of questions in the chat, which we will try to answer here. If you think of any other questions later, please feel free to reach out to us. But as far as the questions in the chat are concerned, maybe the first one, I'm going to address it to Mr. Matthias. And one of our audience members was asking whether the content on these offline computers could be updated, and if yes, how frequently would that be possible? Mr. Matthias, I think you're on mute.
Hello. Yes, sure, the content could be upgraded, and every time, the technology has been evolving from generation to generation, and since we have started with different technology. We've started with Genesis computers, we moved to Raspberry Pi computers, and there has been so many different versions as technology improves. Specifically to the question, yes, we can update the content, and we usually update the content.
There is an interrelated question on that, Mr. Matthias, in the chat too, on the training. Can you please talk a little bit about how you train the teachers on the content?
Okay, so after every installation, when we implemented the project at the school, we conducted a 3-week training program whereby we take teachers and students, and specifically we involve one teacher from installation time and a 3-week training period so that he will be a champion of the program at the school. So we train them and make sure they're able to use the new technology, they're able to get access and navigate to the content.
Thank you. Another question just came in. So Janice, you had briefly mentioned the project in Peru and the geographic expansion of the organization. Are there any other plans beyond Tanzania and the Peru project to establish computer labs in other places?
Well, I get requests all the time from people in other countries. We have no concrete plans at the moment to go to other countries. We do intend to expand the program in Peru. And right now we have Soitsambu and Nananani, and then our next project is to create a pilot district in Tanzania in the Karatu district so that every secondary school in that district has a computer lab. And then we can study that district and produce, results district-wide and use those results to expand to other districts in Tanzania. But we are definitely open to expanding to other countries. I just got a call this morning from, I think Nancy is on the call today about expanding to a school in Uganda.
Very nice, thank you. I guess the next question probably also goes to Mr. Matthias, and our audience member is asking whether our computers would be capable, or are we thinking about upgrading to computers that could address both offline content as well as live internet, or are we confined more to the offline content because that's more suitable to the purpose of the organization?
Yeah, we are using the latest computers, the latest technology, and they are running in open source. All computers are internet enabled. The only challenge is internet that is really not reliable at remote areas, and it is expensive now to have internet connection at the schools. The schools we are working are all community schools. They have very limited budget. They can never afford. By the time they cannot afford the internet expensive. That's why we are using offline content, but the technology allows internet.
That makes total sense. Thank you so much for the answer. So I think those were the questions in the chat. So maybe I would just open it up for any other questions. Feel free to raise your hand or just speak up if you have a question. Yes, to here, please.
Good evening.
Good
Can
evening.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfect.
Okay, my question is, okay, getting internet connected to each school separately might be a very expensive affair. But has Powering Potential actually thought of actually setting up community networks such that as connection which might be dropped at one point can then be taken to several schools as using point-to-point connections? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that question. Yeah, currently we only put a local network, and we are putting offline content because of the reason that internet connection is not available, and we have not yet looked to that option of community-based network. I think maybe something in the future we may look at.
Thank you, Mr. Matthias. Any other questions in the audience? Well, hearing none and appreciating that we are here at the top of the hour, I would like to Thank you very much again, both our audience for attending today, as well as our great presenters to be graciously offering their time and sharing some invaluable insight about the organization. So thank you so much for doing that, and looking forward to continuing the dialogue about powering potential. Thank you so much.